It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague in a danger zone in Rainford. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Over the last few days, there's been three types of weather here. Raining, just stopped raining, about to rain.
This is what you've got to love about English people, ladies and gents. We spent the last 3 months complaining it was too effing hot and our country was not designed for such conditions, and now we are moaning that it's raining all the time. We all need to move to LA where it's 72 and sunny every single day.
The thing is, though, if we did that, we would vanish into the crowd, except on days when it would rain, because we're used to driving in the rain. We would shine like beacons in the night.
We'd be like superheroes.
People would literally stop what they're doing to gaze as we turn left.
Without the world ending. However much we'd like to talk about weather, and that reminds me, we probably do need to get Marcus and some of the rest of the LA crew on the show soon.
It's been a while.
It has. This week we're going to look at Quater Pole Awards. I'm going to take us back to the olden days. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to remind you the NFL has taken us back there. And we're also going to ask the question, why does Jimmy G own the LA Rams? Neil's then going to big up himself with fancy darlings and losers, and then we're going to talk about fancy predictions bound to go wrong. And boy, did they go wrong last week for one of us in particular. Without further ado, though, let us get on with the main event. Firstly, the Quater Pole Awards.
Time now for the main event.
So Neil suggested we should look, as we're a quarter of the way through the season, how we are getting on, or how the league is getting on, and what awards we would give at this moment in time. So Neil said MVP, Coach of the Year, Offensive Rookie, Defensive Rookie, Fantasy Surprise, and Fantasy Disappointment. So let's start, Neil, with MVP. At the start of the season, I went back and looked at our predictions, and you picked Josh Allen. Who is your MVP right now?
Well, Josh Allen would certainly still be a contender, but, and I'm not saying this with my Eagles hat on, because I do think that my stance regarding this player has not varied from the last few years, but I think it's hard to say that it isn't Jalen Hurts.
Is this a 4-0 thing? Is this a performance thing? My fear, not for me, no, not for Jalen, more for the rest of the league, is that I think he's been okay. I think he's been let me rephrase. I think he's been very good, and they also haven't scored points in multiple halves, which means he can only get better, which makes this pick very sensible a long time going forward.
In week one, the Eagles won and Jalen Hurts played okay. In weeks 2 and 3, the Eagles won because of Jalen Hurts. And in week 4, he was instrumental in the comeback against the Jaguars. So I think he's not up and down in the sense that he's got a good week, a god-awful week, and an okay week. He's had an okay week, 2 great weeks, and then a decent week. And the team is 4-0.
That team is 4-0, absolutely. At the start of the season, I picked Josh Allen. I'm going to stick with Josh Allen. I think Jalen Hurts is a very sensible pick. Obviously, Lamar Jackson would also be probably one of the top 3. I think why I stick with Josh Allen is I don't necessarily think he's done anything to stop me thinking that he's at the moment the most dynamic quarterback in the league. I love the way he's playing. I love the concept of there's many different ways to run an offense or run as a quarterback, and his on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens was juggernaut from the X-Men, as in he just barreled through teams. His team is 3-1. His team have played the Ravens, the Titans, the Chiefs, and the Dolphins. 4 teams that either won their division last year, won the Super Bowl, or are playoff contenders this year. They're 3-1.
Or the Rams, even.
What did I say?
The Chiefs.
They played the Rams. Oh yeah, sorry, the Rams. They haven't played the Chiefs yet. They are to play the Chiefs though.
They will.
So I think right now he is still the MVP going forward. However, I can see the call of Jalen Hurts and the way the schedule pans out. It's tough to see why you wouldn't go there.
Yeah, Josh Allen has led the Bills in rushing 3 of their 4 games this season. He is literally, I think it was the late great Therese Paler who did coin this phrase. He is leading the league probably in over my dead body plays. So, I don't hate the call. I just think, I don't want to make it look and sound like I'm a Jalen Hurts hater, and I'm still sitting there saying no, he hasn't done anything yet, because that's not the truth. So,
yeah, and that man is staring at a massive amount of money if things continue. Coach of the Year, Neil. At the start of the season, you picked John Harbaugh. A lot of Baltimore want him dead right now for a decision which I didn't hate. I hated the throw of his quarterback, probably due to the play call by his offensive coordinator. But anyway, who is your Coach of the Year at the Quater Pole?
Doug Peterson. I know this is a bit, low-hanging fruit, because all he had to do was literally turn up and acknowledge the names of his players to be an improvement on the last arse clown. But the Jaguars are 2-2. You could argue should be 4-0. They probably shouldn't have lost to Washington, and were 14-0 up against the Eagles in a borderline monsoon. And so even the 2 games they've lost, they were competitive, and they have looked the best team in their division. And a lot of these players were on the roster last year, so I think it's the turnaround from what this team looked like last year to what they're like now. You have to put that down to the coach.
I think Doug Peterson's an excellent pick, and I think he's second for me. I picked Nick Sirianni at the start of the season because Paul Mannering, said that the Philadelphia Eagles would be the 1 seed in the NFC. Everyone is now on that bandwagon. So then you're like, well, they're 4-0 and he's led that team. And therefore I believe he's Coach of the Year. Now, in sense of other people, that's easier for them because he's made a move up. For me, in theory, he's only doing exactly what I expected him to do. On the touchdown review, I talked to Callum Squires, who'd done an article for the touchdown on what kind of numbers he thought the teams would finish at the end of the year. And he had the Eagles at 12-5, and the one question I asked him is, where the F do you think they're losing 5 games in this league? He looked back through his thing, said there's chances they lose a few silly games and still struggle to get to 5. I think you could argue that one of their hardest games was last week against Jacksonville, and one of their hardest still to come is this week against the Cardinals, who have one of the worst coaching staffs ever, and the only way they're going to win is if they cut the mic between Cliff Kingsbury and Callum Murray, and Callum Murray does it himself.
This does have trap game written all over it.
No, it does, but it helps that Cliff Kingsbury is the coach of the other team. If Cliff isn't involved, then absolutely it's a trap game because they have Callum Murray. Could you imagine him if he was, coordinated? That would be a really cool thing. We may never see it.
Can I just, I know we're still in the awards, but obviously the stat that I hit you with earlier today regarding Cardinals tight ends, as Please. The Cardinals have a tight end who caught an awful lot of passes for an awful lot of yards for the Eagles over the years. The Arizona Cardinals have never had a tight end amass more than 100 receiving yards in a game, because the last time the Cardinals had a tight end do that, they were the Phoenix Cardinals.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, that would have been the Phoenix Cardinals who would have played division games against the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington R, and the New York Football Giants, because they would have been in the NFC East at that moment.
That is correct. 1989 was the last time a Cardinals tight end went for over 100 yards in a single game.
So when you hear your Pittsburgh Steelers fan mate, or your Indianapolis Colts mate, or your New England Patriots mate moaning about the heartache and the struggle and the nightmare they're having, don't forget, you can tell them to F off. You know, I was listening to a podcast before and someone was bemoaning the quarterback position in Indianapolis. F off. Away with you. I expect in 6 years a Green Bay Packers fan will be doing the same and they can get the F as well. No. You had Peyton Manning, and okay, it didn't go well with Andrew Luck, but you still drafted Andrew Luck. No. Sorry, no. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Neil. We didn't pick this at the start of the season, but who do you think it is right now?
I think it's Chris Olave of the Saints, because, you know, I think that there's... I don't think an awful lot of the rookies are wowing us. Breece Hall seems to be coming into his own somewhat. Drake London is playing on an offense that doesn't want to feature him. You know,
doesn't
people
want to
like
feature anybody with a name that you are aware of.
No,
but they win.
You know,
so you know,
Shooter
McGavin-esque in that film.
Yeah, Ken Walker doesn't seem to be able to displace Rashard Penny. So I think Chris Olave has looked very good, and whisper it, looks like he might actually be quarterback proof. So I think it's him.
See, I also picked Chris Olave, but as you've spoken about him, the only other one I would think about was his former teammate from Ohio State, which is Garrett Wilson, who in flashes has been spectacular in what he's done. We are yet to see whether he is quarterback proof. We will soon find out, as for the foreseeable future, Zach Wilson is his quarterback. Neil, who is your defensive Rookie of the Year so far?
This is one I had to give an awful lot of thought to, and I satisfied myself that I believe it is Devin Lloyd of the Jaguars, as he, of the rookies, seems to be making the most frequent contributions. That Jacksonville defense is no mugs. Good England, that. The Jacksonville defense are no mugs. They are, you know, nasty. They're fast. They're aggressive, and he makes plays. One play he didn't make, but nearly did, was he was the defender that Jalen Hurts hit on his way in for a touchdown at the weekend. Believe me, Jalen's still feeling that one. You know, Devin tried to stop him with every fibre of his soul. So I think I'll go with him.
I had Devin Lloyd, and then I thought, is it though? And then I plumped for, again, ironic. This time I didn't change it. I did change this time, unlike the offensive, which it was Chris Olave, to Sauce Gardner for the Jets. I think he's done exceptionally well in what can only be described as a nightmare position for rookies at a holes cornerback. But he's being treated as like a one in that defense, and he's acting like it. Now, he's going to get beat, right? And that's to be expected. But I do think if he continues on the trajectory, the Jets have got themselves an exceptional corner. And I do fear for the Jets that they seem to have drafted a load of really good players apart from the most important position where they may have a dud.
It's possible.
2 fantasy ones, Neil. Who is your fantasy surprise of the season?
Well, there's a few. One of them, the nice surprise, would be James Robinson, who I don't think anyone expected to even be playing, and the fact that he's the running back 11 in PPR formats. Bit of a dud in week 4. Keep talking about that game against the Eagles, but before that he'd scored 19.9, 15.8 and 20.6 fantasy points in his 3 games before that. So that's excellent. You can't really ask for much more than that. But I think the nicest surprise is the fact that the running back 1 and the leader in terms of yards from scrimmage is Saquon Barkley. Because in his heyday, in his rookie season, he was exciting to watch. He was a genuine playmaker on a team bereft of playmakers. And here we are in his final season of his contract on an offense bereft of playmakers. And he's averaging 21.5 PPR points per game. When, you think... I think people were talking themselves into, if he drops to the late second, I might take him. Or if he's there in the third. Whereas now, if you're drafting now for the rest of the season, he's the RB1 and probably the first pick overall.
Yeah, good point, Neil. I've gone with the Sun God Amon-Ra St. Brown. Averaging 17 a game, missed last week. Not practicing yet this week. My undefeated Dynasty fantasy season is living on the edge and need him or Keenan Allen or both to play, please. He was wide receiver 22 off the board, and I think he's wide receiver 4 now. 17 a game on, let's be honest, the funnest offense in the NFL, which I'm not sure anyone expected. It would help if they could stop anyone, but yeah, I think you've got to go with the Sun God. I think he's exceptional. I like the cut of his jib. I like a man who knows every wide receiver who was taken before them in the draft and makes his mission to show them all up.
Gotta love that level of pettiness.
Correct. Neil, who is your fantasy disappointment?
There are 3 for me, 3 massive ones, and they're all running backs. And they are Jonathan Taylor. He was the 101 in most leagues. Now I know he's been hurt, but that team is garbage.
He had 21 touches last week, right? So you're like, okay, 40 yards.
Yeah,
that's horrific.
He's RB22 at the moment, but at RB25 is Dalvin Cook, who's another one. I bought into this thinking better new offense, no real receiving competition. There's just going to be JJ and Irv Smith and Dalvin Cook. Yes, but one thing we seem to have forgotten is that Kevin O'Connell comes from the McVay offense, where they don't throw to running backs. Todd Gurley ruined that for everyone. But for me, the biggest disappointment, because we expected him to be inefficient, because we knew his offense would be crap, but we were banking on volume seeing us through. That's Najee Harris, who is your running back 26 at the moment, averaging 11.3 PPR points per game. For where you drafted him, that is not paying any bills at all, and I don't think it's going to get better for him.
Mine is a wide receiver, and mine's linked to our prediction show. When I said, and I quote, Allen Robinson will be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, because finally he is with a good quarterback. 2 fatal flaws. 1, Allen Robinson's done, and I didn't know it. And 2, the Rams' offense is very broken. And unless your name is Cooper Kupp, you don't get the ball. And that's not good. So I said he'd be top 5. Right now, he's wide receiver 70.
Yeah. Jared Goff's a better fancy quarterback than Matt Stafford.
I think you added an extra word there for the beginning of the season that you didn't need. That word was fantasy. Because right now, Jared Goff is a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford in the 2022 season after 4 weeks.
To be fair, I think Stafford would kill for Jared Goff's offensive line. In fact, I think Matthew Stafford would kill for an offensive line.
Let's be honest, with the exception of Cooper Kupp, every other skill player / offensive lineman is probably better on the Lions than it is on the Rams.
Yeah.
Which is scary considering the Rams won the Super Bowl last year.
That is a frightening proposition.
Fantastic stuff, Neil. That are the Quater Pole Awards. I want to give a couple more stories before we go into the fancy stuff. I started watching the league in about 1990. Channel 4, for those of those persuasions. And you won the league, you won Super Bowls then, Neil, running the ball and playing sound defense. Now, the league has gone far, far away from that. It was assumed that was assumed. However, this season, some teams are laughing in the face of throwing the ball. I'll give you some stats. Just last week alone, the Bears versus the Giants combined for 38 passes. The game ended with Saquon Barkley taking wildcat snaps. The Falcons threw an interception and then did not pass it again. They ran 14 consecutive times in a victory. The Patriots ran it 33 times, only passed it 21. Now, of course, they had Brian Hoyer and Zippy Zappy, but even so, they played the Green Bay Packers, who ran it 35 times for 200 yards, while having the two-time defending MVP winner at quarterback. Is this these offenses aren't very good at throwing the ball? Or is there a little bit of a, you know what you do to stop everyone doing Tampa 2? And that's run the ball.
If those 4 teams were all leading their division and all therefore likely to be challenging for honours at the business end of the season, I would say it was a case of, these offences zigging while everyone else is zagging. But I know for a fact, and you can quote me on the word fact, that 2 of those teams are hiding their quarterback because they are terrified of the damage he can do if he throws the ball. Mm-hmm. And another one, he may be the 2-time defending MVP. He's not thrown to anyone. And, we can be enchanted by Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and Alan Lazard all we like. But seriously, I'm not dropping back 50 times to feed those 3. So... And as you say, the Patriots are just, Patriots are hiding both their quarterbacks. But you question, they'd do this if Mac Jones was there as well. So these are not 4 powerhouses, or 5. We're talking obviously about the Bears and the Giants. This is just a question that it's never been easier to pass the ball. It's never been easier to find wide receivers in the draft. And all these teams can't.
Fair.
In fact, some of them repeatedly miss on wide receivers and almost make it their business to get them wrong. Seriously, if you're a wide receiver for the New York Giants, you're either a malcontent, unhealthy, or a trier. Not winning with any of those 3.
And some of them are multiple of those. What I would like to state is, with the exception of the New England Patriots, none of those teams are below 500. Which is ironic, considering I think 3 of those teams we thought would be horrific, and there's still a possibility that they will be. But one of them heads into Tampa with a chance to take the division lead against the broken Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we shall see.
What I love is as well, Josh Norris. I can never say his name. Josh Norris. He always says teams are honest twice a season: free agency and the draft.
Yeah.
Because that tells you what type of team a team wants to be by, who they give their money to, what players they select. In back-to-back years, the Atlanta Falcons have taken a tight end and a wide receiver in the first round and now have a quarterback they do not trust to throw the ball. Is being 2-2 a good enough reason to just say, well, we set fire to those picks, let's carry it on? Or do you not think, we're not winning anything here, let's see what we've got in Ridder? Because otherwise, there's a chance we may play ourselves into a 7, and finish here, and we can't get a quarterback.
Yeah, it's an issue of being mediocre but winning. Final thing, Neil. Can you explain to me how Jimmy Garoppolo in the regular season is 7-0 against the defending champion Los Angeles Rams?
Well, Jimmy Garoppolo is a baller, as we've always suspected. The brighter the light, the brighter he shines. Or whether it's just literally, it just happens in sport. Sometimes I think, sometimes a player has an issue with another player. A fast bowler has something over, a certain batsman, or a batsman can't play a certain bowler. Or some teams, literally, it's just the player just says, "Nah, you're not beating me." I don't know what it is. It's indescribable to me because everyone else he plays against, Jimmy Garoppolo tends to look like hot garbage unless he's handing off. but I just can't understand it.
What I like about it is it's just so random, but everyone knows it's going to happen, and it still happens. You're like, oh, as you said, in the kind of cricket sense or the football sense, he's going to score against this team, you know. No, we're definitely going to stop him this time. We've got it. We know exactly what... Oh, look, he scored again. This guy's going to bowl him out. He does it every single time. Exactly the same delivery. I bet you he doesn't fall for it again. No, he's fell for it again. I look at this and I look back and said, like, I know the Denver Broncos have been rubbish since Peyton Manning left. I understand that. And I know the Kansas City Chiefs have been good. But this is a division rivalry. And the Chiefs have not been beaten by the Denver Broncos, home or road, since Peyton Manning left. The Broncos have not beaten the Raiders since Manning left. So they haven't beaten the Oakland Raiders or the Las Vegas Raiders since Manning left. That was 2015. The Raiders aren't good. Like the Chiefs thing, you could put for, well, you know, certain teams do say, you know, if you win your division every year, you know, I'm sure that the Steelers have got an amazing record against the Browns, you know, Patriots and Jets, that kind of keeper, right? But Raiders constantly beating Broncos? That makes no sense to me.
Nothing about the Denver Broncos makes any sense.
Yeah.
Weird ass franchise.
As I text you from a great tweet I saw today, now we know Russell Wilson was holding back Pete Carroll.
That's not fair.
It's just not, Neil. Let's move on. Let's get on with the fancy portion of the show, and let's start with Fancy Darling.
Hello, darling.
Neil, fighting back last week, 2-0. He gave us Jamal Williams, who ended up being RB7, 23.9 points, massive win. Neil doubled down on, I love picking defence in some kind of fantasy noise. Picked the Giants. They were defending special teams 2 last week, 16 points, another win. Neil now 4-4 on the season and looking to get a winning record. Neil, how are you going to get a winning record? Give us your first Fancy Darling, please.
First Fancy Darling is a tight end. It's Tyler Conklin. Tyler Conklin is number 1 in the NFL among all tight ends in pass route run. So when he's out there, he runs route. That's what he does. You know, he is the conk daddy. He's caught 21 of his 26 targets for 192 yards and a touchdown this season. He's seen at least 5 targets in every game. He seems to have survived the Flacco to Zach Wilson transition fairly unscathed. I know it's only one game, but they're playing the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins have allowed the most receptions to tight ends in the entire league. So I think this will be a bit of a nip and tuck affair, as it will, and I think Zach Wilson's going to pass the ball a ton. So he's got his talented wide receivers, but also we've got Conklin over the middle, where the Dolphins have struggled a wee bit to cover people.
Who's your second Fancy Darling?
Second Fancy Darling is the Miami Dolphins defense.
Love it.
Now,
love it. Both sides of the coin.
Both sides of the coin. They can let Tyler Conklin rip them to pieces, but the Jets turn the ball over for fun, whether it's Flacco or Zach Wilson. Nearly 20% of all Jets possessions end with them coughing the ball up. They've allowed 10 sacks in 4 games. They've also fumbled an awful lot as well. So I think the Dolphins can get after them, and I think they can force some mistakes. But also sometimes you don't need to force Zach Wilson to mistake. He'll do it by himself.
Love it, Neil. Love it. Let's move on and let's get to Fancy Loser. Another winning week on Fancy Loser. Neil picked George Kittle. He only got 4.4 points. He was tight end 37. Yeah, that's right. 36 different tight ends scored more points than George Kittle. That's not right.
Although, as well, 49 scored more than Mark Andrews.
Again, also not right. But I think the Andrews one seems like an anomaly. The Kittle one seems like more of a regular occurrence at the moment, which is concerning for owners of him. Neil is now 2-2 for Fancy Loser, so can he get to over 500 with this as well? Neil, what is your Fancy Loser this week?
There may be some people who are still pinning their hopes on Ezekiel Elliott being good at football and therefore good at fantasy. He's not if we have a look, if I can just pull my stats up wherever I can find them. Yeah, he's not very good. He has 59 rush attempts for 227 yards and a rushing touchdown this season. That is a 3.8 yards per carry average. He's also averaging 1.3 receptions per game. That's not good either. The Rams, as bad as they seem to have been, and they are, you can get at the Rams, it would seem, through the air. So from a wide receiver point of view, you might want to start, CD Lamb, you want to start him, obviously, but maybe Michael Gallup as well. You don't want to be starting Ezekiel Elliott because he's not dominating touches and he's not producing when he gets the ball either.
If only they wouldn't have paid him millions and millions of dollars. What I would say is, as well, before people rush out to change their team, CD Lamb did not practice today for the Dallas Cowboys and is a doubt for the game. He is on the same roster as Keenan Allen and Amon-Ra St. Brown for me in Dynasty. This is getting deadly dangerous and serious right now. Neil, let's move on and let's give our fancy predictions bound to go wrong. Last week, I proposed that the Dallas Cowboys would become the top scoring defense in the league so far this season, so they get over 26 points. I think I said 30. They only got 10. They were defense and special teams 8. It's probably because they were like a cat playing with a ball of wool. It was so easy for them to beat the Washington Commanders. It was embarrassing. They probably could have scored 50 points if they chose. They chose 10 was enough and took mercy on the team. I don't know why. You picked Mitchell Trubisky to be a top 10 quarterback, score 2 touchdowns and have 60 rushing yards. He was quarterback 34. That's right, there's only 32 starters in the league, and Neil's quarterback was 34. He had 2.46 points, obviously a loss, and was benched at half-time. Go Neil. Neil, who is your prediction this week?
My prediction this week is the Cincinnati Bengals lead the NFL in terms of wide receiver rushing attempts against them. I think it's 10. So my prediction is Devin Duvernay will score a rushing touchdown for the Baltimore Ravens against the Bengals.
I like it. I am going to go to... I've got a couple, and I'm going to go with the game between the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I am going to say, trying to say it, I'm going to do it. The Caleb Huntley will rush for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns and will be a running back one, like top 12 running back this week. Because, let's be honest, the Atlanta Falcons have decided that they will pick the most random people ever to lead their offense to victory. And because Tyler Algier last week was the best player, that means that Arthur Smith can't pick him this week, and therefore he will go with Caleb Huntley, who will rush for 100 yards, 2 scores, and will be in the top 12 running backs this week.
See, Kyle Pitts didn't practice today, so there's a good chance he may actually miss Sunday, in which case he'll score the exact same number of fantasy points as he would have done if he'd played.
It's tough to argue with such salient points. I've done this rant already, so I'm not going to do it again.
Satire.
Thanks for making everybody aware. Neil, that is it for this week's show. Before we're back next week, where can people catch you?
Follow me on Twitter at ndutton13. Find my stuff at Numberfire, Rotoviz, Player Profiler, 4for4 Football, and also on the Nakooms podcast.
I am at Mainty7. Come back, and we are at Waxing_Lyrical. Touchdown review for the touchdown.co.uk came out yesterday. Myself, Callum, Taib, Thomas and Joe talking biggest disappointment we've had so far this season, and they are all trying to catch me in picks as I am 5-2 and living the dream. Thomas, however, doing his best, using his picks for good rather than evil. What we would describe, Neil, as the chow last week. Picked against his team, so his team won, and then picked the Saints to win, who he hates, so they get beat by the Vikings. So Thomas already decided that he wants to lose all the time. Fantastic stuff. I love that kind of work. That is the end of this week's show. Great stuff as always. Enjoy week 5, and we'll be back to preview week 6. Until then, these top guys are out.